General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow is going through a phase where the haunting thoughts in her mind are no longer scattered memories, but have become part of her daily rhythm, eating away at her soul with repeated images of mistakes, emotional wounds, and the feeling of betrayal within the very relationship she once trusted the most, her romance with Drew. At first, when she started things with Drew, Willow believed it would be a peaceful new beginning after all the turmoil with Michael. She needed a mature man, someone capable of protecting and supporting her, and Drew, with his composed appearance, calm demeanor, and a past marked by pain, seemed like a safe choice. But that safe facade turned out to be a double-edged sword. His cold indifference, the way he constantly avoided meaningful conversations, his prioritization of self-interest and ambition over the emotions of the one he loved, all of it gradually turned their love into a suffocating emotional prison from which Willow could no longer breathe. The long nights beside Drew became quieter than those she spent alone. His hugs grew mechanical, his words of encouragement hollow, and the dreams of a happy home no longer stirred her heart but became a forced series of images she had to confront daily. Willow tried. She endured. She convinced herself that all relationships take time to harmonize, that everyone has past burdens to overcome. But the more she tried, the more she felt herself fading like a shadow in the life of the man she once chose. Drew, in his pursuit of an idealized image of a perfect man, unintentionally made Willow carry the emotional cracks in their love, cracks he never dared to confront. Eventually, when the mental torment became too heavy, Willow was forced to make a painful choice, to leave Drew, not because she no longer loved him, but because she could no longer love while her heart was rotting from wounds that had never been healed. But breaking up didn't bring Willow relief. On the contrary, it left her in a terrifying void, one unlike anything she had ever experienced. She no longer knew who she was without someone beside her. The days when she was a wife, a mother, a woman trying to build a new family had made her forget that she, too, needed a place to lean on. That very feeling, the fragile line between strength and exhaustion, led Willow to a newfound need. She needed someone not just to love her, but to understand her, to empathize with what she had lost. It wasn't weakness. It was an awakening after a long slumber, where Willow realized that a real relationship is not a place for silent endurance, but where one rediscovers themselves through the presence of another. And in that moment, the image of Chase began to appear more and more in Willow's mind. Chase wasn't someone she had actively sought out, but every time they crossed paths, old memories came rushing back, times they had weathered loss together, gentle looks, fleeting touches that made her heart feel alive again. Chase wasn't perfect, but he never made her feel abandoned. With Chase, Willow felt important, valued, not just a supporting role in someone else's story. And it was this contrast, between a calculated Drew and a sincere Chase, that made her heart, though wounded, still find a different rhythm whenever she looked into his eyes. Willow didn't know if Chase still had feelings for her. She knew he was building a new life with Brook Lynn, a love everyone saw as real and deep. But the heart has no rules. And for the first time in a long while, Willow began to allow herself to dream of something she once thought she no longer deserved, a second chance. Not to fix the past, but to walk toward a future with someone she believed might still be able to love her, despite everything. However, along with that hope came a new haunting fear, the fear that she might ruin what Chase already had, that she would once again hurt a good man. And that she, with all her unresolved wounds, might never be strong enough to step into true love again. Willow couldn't keep running forever. And the feelings returning for Chase were no longer something she could deny. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that every step would require careful thought. But one thing she was more certain of than ever, she could no longer live haunted by the past with Drew. And if there was any man who could pull her out of that darkness, who could help her believe again, it was Chase, the man who, though distant, had always been the quiet heartbeat in Willow's chest during the days when she thought she had lost the ability to love. Meanwhile, Chase was being plunged into a deep psychological shock as the full truth about Brook Lynn and the lies that had spanned months came to light, not just before him, But before all of Port Charles, a town where honesty is held above all else. He never imagined he would face a day when the woman he had trusted implicitly, the one he loved, fought for, and envisioned a lifelong future with, would become the source of one of the bitterest betrayals he had ever experienced. What deepened that pain further was Joe's reaction, someone who had once seen Brook Lynn as family, a sister, a source of stability in his uncertain life, now standing up publicly, refusing to forgive, and openly expressing his disdain for what Brook Lynn and her mother Lois had done in the shadows. Brook Lynn, once seen as a symbol of strength, talent, and vitality within the General Hospital community, was now tumbling into a chasm of disappointment. Everything she once stood for, loyalty, resilience, family pride, was now obscured by the dust of lies she and Lois had crafted into a sophisticated mask to conceal the truth. The secrets hidden were no longer minor mistakes from the past, but a symbol of calculated, organized betrayal, made worse by the sustained silence of those who should have spoken out long ago. Chase, a man who deeply values honesty and transparency, could not accept that he had been turned into an emotional pawn in Brook Lynn's game, that the love he gave her, pure and genuine, was used as a shield to cover up much darker deeds behind the scenes. What turned this into a disaster wasn't momentary anger or personal arguments, but the uncontrollable domino effect that followed. Port Charles is a small town where relationships are tightly intertwined, where reputations take a lifetime to build but can be destroyed in a blink, and that's exactly what was happening to Brook Lynn. She didn't just lose Chase, the man who once placed his whole world at her feet, but also the trust of those who once looked up to her as a role model. Joe's public condemnation of Brook Lynn and Lois struck a blow not only to her self-esteem but also triggered a community-wide reevaluation of her actions and choices in recent years. Lois, once idolized by her daughter, could no longer escape the storm of criticism. Those who admired her for her sharpness and dedication now began questioning her role in Brook Lynn's string of mistakes. Was it Lois herself, cunning and strategic, who helped orchestrate everything from behind the scenes? Were the seemingly noble words of advice to her daughter just a mask for manipulation and control? If so, then the consequences were no longer limited to a breakup between two lovers, but extended to a moral collapse within a once respected family in Port Charles. In the midst of this chaos, Chase was no longer the quiet man who suffered in silence. He was undergoing a powerful internal shift, from the collapse of trust to the painful realization that love cannot survive without absolute honesty. He had given everything to Brook Lynn, his empathy during her falls, his forgiveness during her missteps. But this time, what he faced was no longer a personal mistake that could be mended, but an organized system of deception, maintained through silence and cloaked in the name of protecting the one you love. Inside Chase was a storm of conflicting emotions, disappointment, rage, heartbreak, but above all, sorrow for a love that had once been so beautiful. And when Gio stood for the truth, and others began turning away from Brook Lynn, Chase was forced to accept that the love he had so persistently protected was truly dead, killed in a whirlwind of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. The disaster Brook Lynn now faced was no longer just her personal downfall, it had become a clear testament to the price of trading trust for control. And once trust is lost, no love is strong enough to piece everything back together again. Willow and Chase, two people once entangled in a turbulent love affair, now unexpectedly find themselves on the same side in a new battle. One where haunting memories from the past not only resurface but begin to reshape every decision they make in the present. In a world riddled with conflict, heartache, and rapidly shifting relationships in Port Charles, Willow is quietly preparing for a difficult journey, the fight for custody of Amelia, the child she sees as the last lifeline in a life shaken by relentless upheaval. And in this moment, Chase, the man who once loved Willow with a pure and profound heart, has become the unexpected ally she needs most. Willow is no longer the naive woman once caught in a confusing web of choices between Michael and Chase. Bitter experiences, especially after discovering Michael's betrayal, have changed her. She has become more rational, more grounded, and crystal clear about what she needs to do to protect the most precious thing in her life, the right to raise, safeguard, and love Amelia fully. Yet she knows all too well that in a legal battle, especially one against Michael, a man of power, reputation, and influence, she cannot stand alone. She needs someone beside her. Not just to support her emotionally, but someone strong, honest, and trustworthy enough to help prove that Amelia deserves to grow up in an environment filled with love, rather than a home ruled by manipulation, deception, and family politics. Among everyone she has ever known, there is only one person she fully trusts in terms of morality, character, and genuine affection, and that's Chase. Chase, after everything he has endured with Brook Lynn, is also going through an internal transformation. He is no longer the man who silently sacrifices or the cop easily swept away by blind emotion. Recent betrayals have led Chase to realize that he deserves more, real love, a true family, and above all, the chance to become a father. While Brook Lynn turned her back on the values he holds dear, Willow, through her courage to face the truth and fight for what she believes is right, presents Chase with an entirely different vision of family, imperfect, yet real, and filled with the yearning for a new beginning. The desire to be a father, once silenced in Chase by old wounds, now reawakens powerfully when he looks at Amelia, a child not biologically his, but one who stirs something deeply genuine and familiar in him. Standing beside Willow is no longer just the act of a former lover or a loyal friend, but a natural recalibration of his heart. He wants to be a man of responsibility, to create a safe haven for Willow and Amelia, and to have a real shot at building a family rooted in love and honesty. This unspoken harmony between Willow and Chase is gradually forming a new alliance, an emotional structure far more solid than anything Willow ever had with Michael or Drew. While Michael becomes increasingly consumed with extreme measures to protect custody of Wiley, Willow and Chase move forward steadily, grounded in truth, in selfless love, and in their shared desire to rebuild a life from the wreckage. This connection isn't a rekindling of an old romance, but a new journey, where two wounded souls find each other not through fleeting passion, but through a shared devotion to something greater, creating a real home for a child who deserves to grow up in safety and love. However, this very alliance is pushing everything further into a complicated direction. Michael, with his controlling nature and growing ego, won't sit idly by while Willow begins to lean on Chase. The prospect of Chase becoming a father figure to Amelia, the role Michael was supposed to fill, would be a direct blow to his pride. The custody battle is no longer a mere legal dispute, but a life-or-death chess match where wounds, lies, and rivalry between former lovers will be laid bare. Though Willow and Chase are not officially back together, their emotional connection is becoming undeniable. They no longer avoid or fear the past. They understand that they're part of a new chain of adjustments, where love is no longer the only priority, but also the safety of a child, the value of truth, and the responsibility of rebuilding a family from ruins. And if they truly walk this path hand in hand, it won't just be a second chance for themselves, it will be a journey to give Amelia, an innocent child caught in the storms of adult conflict, what every child deserves. A home filled with love that needs no disguise. Willow and Chase are gradually forming a bond that cannot be denied, not merely remnants of a past romance, but a growing network of responsibility, mutual interest, and emotion that tightens with time. They are no longer just two people who once loved each other and endured heartbreak. They have become two powerful allies united in pursuit of something far greater than personal love. Custody of Amelia, and a future of lasting safety and happiness for a child amid life's chaos. This evolving bond is silently shaping a significant emotional shift in the ever-changing landscape of Port Charles, where every personal decision can change the fate of an entire family. After everything Willow has gone through, from Michael's betrayal, her disappointment with Drew, to the overwhelming pressure of raising Amelia, she has begun to realize that she can no longer stand alone. Chase is not just someone who once understood her more than anyone else, now he is the only one willing to shoulder the responsibility for a child that is not his, simply because he believes in the goodness a true family can offer. It's that honesty and dedication from Chase that is making Willow feel a different kind of love, deeper, steadier, and perhaps the answer to what she has always lacked in previous relationships. As the bond between Willow and Chase deepens, on the other side, Brook Lynn and Drew are starting to realize they are slowly losing the two people they thought would always stay. Brook Lynn. After a series of mistakes and the collapse of her reputation due to exposed lies, is desperately scrambling to keep Chase, trying to mend the pieces she herself shattered. But what she didn't anticipate is that Chase, the man who once waited, forgave, and showed endless patience, is no longer looking back. He's tired of the contradictions between Brook Lynn's words and actions, tired of forgiving things that should never have happened. And now finds peace in the arms of the woman who once hurt him most, Willow, yet also the only one who ever made him feel calm enough to dream of a real home. At the same time, Drew, the man Willow once thought would be her harbor after the storm, is now lost in the cold distance growing between them. She no longer looks at him with warmth. No longer shares her worries or places trust in the promises he once made. Drew knows he lost her the moment he chose to hide the truth, to prioritize status and control over emotional honesty. And now, seeing her smile again with Chase, he realizes that the love he clung to is slipping away, not because of a third party, but because he was never truly worthy of keeping it. The new tension isn't born of threats or courtroom maneuvers, it stems from inner fears corroding each relationship. Brook Lynn is haunted by her helplessness as Chase slips away despite her efforts to change. Drew is consumed by the fear of losing Willow and the growing sense of being irrelevant in the love story he once believed in. They're trying to hold on, through apologies, interference, even attempts to sabotage Willow and Chase, but they fail to see that love, once stripped of trust and sincerity, cannot survive on pressure and possession alone. And that is what's driving everything further, no longer isolated conflicts, but a chain of consequences spiraling out of control. Willow and Chase, though yet to declare their feelings, are growing closer, and it hasn't gone unnoticed in the ever-watchful eyes of Port Charles, where every glance, every interaction, becomes the subject of speculation. The way they look at each other, how they work together to care for Amelia, and the harmony in their choices has become a threat to Drew and Brook Lynn, two people now clinging to love that has already faded. When the truth of their feelings can no longer be hidden, when the love between Willow and Chase begins to take shape in a more mature and enduring form, all the desperate efforts of Drew and Brook Lynn will only drive them into deeper despair. These changes are not just shifts in relationships, they are a full redefinition of values. Who deserves to be loved, who is strong enough to be a father, and who has the patience and kindness to be the foundation of a new family. And while Willow and Chase quietly build that future through honesty and shared purpose, Brook Lynn and Drew are losing themselves in the fear of loss, leading to mistakes that will only deepen the rift beyond repair. Willow's storyline is entering a turbulent phase, marking a significant shift not only in her emotions and thoughts but also shaking the entire axis of power, relationships, and trust existing in Port Charles. Once known for her gentle, submissive nature and her constant pursuit of safety for her family, Willow is gradually transforming into a clear-headed, strong woman, ready to break old boundaries to protect herself and what she truly believes is right. This change did not come from a sudden outburst but is the result of a series of events, pressures, and intertwined psychological shocks, especially stemming from secrets thought to be forever buried between Michael and Drew, the two men who once played central roles in her life. Willow is facing one of the greatest internal adjustments she has ever experienced. Her attempts to trust Michael again and return to being the mother of Wiley and Amelia after a long separation was her last effort to preserve the image of a true family for her children. But as Michael's truth began to surface, that he not only hid his shady relationship with Sasha but also manipulated his own treatment results to regain her trust, everything Willow believed in immediately collapsed. Even more terrifying was the discovery that Drew, whom she had once considered a safe shoulder after the upheaval with Michael, was actually the one hiding the true identity of the father of Sasha's child. The two men, two parts of her past she once relied on, now both stood on the side of lies. These consecutive shocks not only caused Willow to lose faith but also plunged all of Port Charles into unprecedented chaos. Because what's happening is no longer just the private matter of a couple. It is a chain of troubles capable of shaking even the most powerful families. When the truths about Michael and Drew were exposed to the public, when the community learned that the two men who represented the image of model fathers and trustworthy partners secretly manipulated, deceived, and controlled the life of the vulnerable woman they had promised to protect. The anger among the people of Port Charles became uncontrollable. Rumors spread from cafes, hospital hallways, to newsrooms and local social media. Those who once supported Michael began questioning his moral integrity. Drew's former allies silently withdrew, afraid of being swept up in the growing storm of criticism. Willow, at the center of the storm, was no longer a victim. She began to rise, not as a betrayed woman, but with the courage of a mother fighting to take control of her and her children's future. She refused all reconciliations, rejected all belated apologies, and instead took strategic, steady steps. Starting with reviewing custody rights, legal matters, and rebuilding a circle of trust. This brought Willow closer to Chase, the only person who never deceived her, who once loved her purely, and who now appeared just when she needed a true companion. The crisis Willow faces has sparked one of the largest waves of psychological and social restructuring in recent times in Port Charles. It is not just a love story but a question of trust, the consequences of lies, and the ultimate limits of a person pushed to the edge. Drew and Michael once symbolized the best things: redemption, protection, courage. But now, they stand as the clearest evidence of how power, arrogance, and selfishness can turn a man into the villain they once hated. The explosion in Port Charles is not only about the names tarnished or the criticism in the media but a wave of awakening in the hearts of the people, that they can no longer blindly ignore those who exploit love to hide the truth. Willow, once a passive character in relationships, is now becoming the center of transformation, a symbol of resilience, rebirth from brokenness, and the only one brave enough to pull down the curtain of lies. With each passing day, new troubles continue to emerge, and those once thought untouchable fall one by one under the consequences of their own wrong choices. Willow no longer runs away. She faces forward. Steps steadily, slow but determined, bringing her closer to freedom, justice, and a life she can fully control. And when the final pieces of truth fall into place, when Port Charles is forced to confront the dark side of its once idealized figures, that will be the beginning of a new era, with Willow no longer a victim but a guide.